I beheld another beast. This is the two-horned beast. This is the false prophet. I thought I was going to get into this more than I am, but I wanted to cover all the places in Revelation where we see this charagma, or this mark of the beast. I need to know how much time I have so I know how far to... 7 minutes. Oh, me. Let me just give you a little bit. I beheld another beast. It has to be the false prophet, because with the beast system, when I say false prophet, the false prophet is not a man. It is a religious preaching system, and it preaches the doctrine of the beast. And what is the doctrine of the beast? Self. It's the Garden of Eden. It's the tree. It preaches all that's in the world. Is this doctrine being preached right now on TV and on magazines and in newspapers and movies? Are they preaching the doctrine of all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life? That's being preached, isn't it? And I beheld another beast. Another beast is neuter gender. This is a system of false prophet that preaches for the beast. And what it does, it masquerades. It's a counterfeit that masquerades as Christ. I'll tell you what it is. You'll find this over here in 2 Corinthians 11. 2 Corinthians 11. And I'll come back to this next week. I'm about out of time. Here is who this is. 2 Corinthians 11. And Paul says, verse 4, for if he that cometh preacheth. These are preachers, aren't they? They're false prophets. They preach another Jesus, whom we have not preached. A preacher of false doctrine is a false prophet, isn't it? Whom we have not preached, or if ye have received another spirit, which we have not received, or another gospel which ye have not accepted. Paul said, I'm afraid when these preachers come to Corinth, I'm afraid you'll go along with them. I'm afraid you might well bear with them. Then he says over here, here's who they are. Verse 12, but what I do, that will I do, that I may cut off occasion from them, from these false preachers or false prophets, which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, they want to glory, get attention. Sounds like T.D. Jakes, Kenneth Copeland, Fred Price, Creflo Dollar, Oral Roberts, Charles Stanley. That wherein, or Billy Graham, wherein they glory, they may be found even as we. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, preaching for a world system, for money and self. They're hirelings, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. They're going to disguise themselves, and they're going to claim to be able to call the judgment of God down from heaven. What was that in the Old Testament? Fire from heaven. Fire from heaven was a sign that was a man was a preacher of truth. Wasn't it? And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Transformed, of course, is the word metaschematizo, M-E-T-A-S-C-H-E-M-A-T-I-Z-O. Means to disguise oneself. They're going to come disguised as preachers of truth, and they're going to claim to call fire from heaven, which is a metaphor. It's idiomatic language They're going to claim to be able to call the judgment of God down and claim to be true preachers of God. Because if you go back over here to Revelation 13, we see them. I beheld another beast, verse 11, coming out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb. He's going to look like Jesus. But he speaks as a dragon. He speaks smooth words. And Jesus preaches good words. Jesus preaches great plainness of speech. Paul preached great plainness of speech. And when you preach great plainness of speech, they kill you for it. And when you preach good words and fair speeches, they love you for it. And you're friends with the world. That makes you an enemy of God. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast. He exercises the power of the world system, or it exercises the power of the world system before it, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. He's talking up the doctrines of the beast world system, isn't he? He's representing that. The false prophet represents the beast. The false prophet is always identified with the world beast system, whose deadly wound was healed, and it doeth great wonders, so it maketh fire come down from heaven. That's the same thing that the false apostles are doing. They're transforming themselves into apostles of Christ, claiming to preach the truth, and preaching the truth. Calling fire from heaven is an idiom for preaching truth. He maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in sight of men, but he's really not preaching the truth, because the next verse says, and deceiveth them. It's a false calling fire from. This is not talking about there's going to be a man that comes along and he's going to call fire from heaven, and people are going to, oh, let's follow him. That's not what it's talking about at all. Remember in the first verse of the book? Remember the first verse? When you go back to the first verse of the book, this is what John is saying in the first verse when he says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass, and he sent and signified it by his angel. Signify, Simeon. It means to give a flag signal, a beacon. A flag points out something. It signifies something. Signal, we get the word, it means a sign. A sign points to something. And what he's talking about using idiomatic language to point to something. Calling fire from heaven was a Simeon. It was a beacon or a signal. It was a way to point. And you know what? God has given us this so that we can see it. And all of these people can't see the Bible. Oh boy, that revelation is interesting. Bunch of fire going off, nuclear warheads. And look at there, those scorpions, those coming up out of the hole in the ground. There's smoke coming up. It's not what it's talking about. The Greeks in the first century, they used all kinds of idioms and great in-depth teaching to teach people something. And we don't know nothing about that. We're just real shallow, length and width talkers. We're just very crude, barbaric people, and we have a barbaric language. I've said it so many times. If we could back up to the first century, and all we knew was our thinking in the English, and we could go back there and converse with them in Greek, but all we knew was our understanding, we'd sound like Tarzan and Tonto. And the Frankenstein monster. Good. Smoke. Good. Me Tarzan, you Jane. Kimasabi. We would sound so crude to them. I'm out of time. I really wanted to take time so you can understand this, so you can see the beast is alive and well. It's here. The message is